Hi, everybody. Welcome to Outlaw Sports. Mike Lownsbrough, my good buddy Burke joins us. The Calgary Stampeder season starts, and they are the defending Grey Cup champions. And they're going to be a big turnover. But I want to talk about the CFL in whole, because right now, I think the league's a little bit in trouble. They're down in attendance. Some people say as low as 30% across the board. They need help marketing. They're trying to develop a new identity. They're trying to bring in all these Europeans. They're trying to bring all these Mexicans. It's enough to make one go crazy. Now, I'm going to suggest one thing, and you, as a Canadian, may hate me for this. I know some of my best friends out there are going to hate me for it, but I'm going to say it like this. Maybe it's time we lose the Canadian element of the CFL, this Canadian player. Open it up. If you're going to bring Mexicans and Europeans in it, why don't you just open it up to everybody? No Canadians. Best football player comes out, he goes on, and that's your team. Now, I know you're going to say no to that, so start.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous statement. In my opinion, why try to fix what's not broken? Number one, 1996, they brought the number from 10 starting Canadians down to 7.
Right.
They're going to bring that number from 7, they want to bring it down to 5. And then from 5, it's going to come down to 3, and 3 to none. This is a CFL football game. We started before the NFL started. It's a Canadian game at the end of the day. I am a true Canadian. There's not anybody out there that's more Canadian than I am. I was fortunate to play in the game. This idea of bringing 7 to 5 is ridiculous.
Okay, I'm going to throw one thing at you. If it's so important, if the Canadian Football League is so important and the Canadian football player is so important, why do people not go to watch the Calgary Dinosaurs? Why is the Vanier Cup only got 7,000 people watching it? Why? Because no one cares. And some of these football players that play in the UFC programs and the other programs aren't good players. They're not. You can't tell me they are. So why, Burke? I mean, isn't it about entertaining the people that want to see a pro game?
I came up through the CIS. Okay. And that being said, I have watched over the last 20, 25, 30 years of Canadian talent development, Canadian football development. Our Canadian game has come leaps and bounds from where it was 30 years ago. We've got about 150, I would say to 200 Canadians down in the NCAA on full scholarships. You're going to see a small portion of that go to the NFL. We have come a long damn way with our player development in this country. Again, the CFL is a Canadian game. Of course, the GMs, the coaches, and the scouts want to see this happen. Number one, it takes less work off their plate, or I guess more work off their plate. Right, where Americans are a dime a dozen. They start the game earlier. They've got, it's embedded in the American culture down there. They've got better coaching down there. They go into, football is life down there. Right. So to go down and pick a few guys off down there, it's easy. Again, they're a dime a dozen. But you know what? It challenges those coaches and those scouts and those teams, upper office, to go and find those diamonds in the rough, such as Andrew Harris, such as John Cornish, such as Brad Sinopoli. If they didn't develop as players, they never would have gotten their shot. I mean, John Cornish, I can recall when he came into the organization from Kansas. Nobody knew who he was, right? He played in behind Joffrey Reynolds, kept his mouth shut for 2 years, hit the ground running, and became one of the best running backs this league has ever seen, CFL history. Andrew Harris, the same. He came up out of some junior Vancouver program. These people would have never gotten that shot if the ratios were down, in my opinion. Brad Sinopoli, he was a quarterback. I thought his career was over. He converts over to a wide receiver. Now he has 4 1,000-yard seasons. He's got 3 All-Stars under his belt. Andrew Harris, he's closing in on 8,000 yards rushing and 5 All-Stars.
But will these guys not play no matter what, Burke? I mean, they're great players. I'm saying sometimes you have to. I'm just saying. People, why aren't they going to CFL games? They're not going to college games. They're not watching the Vanier Cup, and now they're not watching as much CFL as they used to.
This European, this Mexican thing, it's a complete joke to me. It's ridiculous. Keep the CFL the same way that it is, and work on the marketing side. That's where they need the help. Right now, what's going on in the league, it's asinine. The leadership up top is terrible. That's a fact. And it angers me, and it angers a lot of guys that played the game before and are currently playing the game now.
What about, I know everything now.
And let me break you off. Sorry, Mike.
No,
let me break
good.
you off. Okay, it takes a Canadian player to get into his element, to get into his prime, into his peak of his career, development years. The Americans come up here and they're already fully developed and they're peaking. They've got, most of them are D1 guys. Most of them have 2 or 3 years of NFL experience or a couple of camps under their belts. They're ready to go. The Canadians, we start off by playing hockey and soccer up here. We catch on to football later on in our years, for the most part. It takes some development years to develop a guy, and Canadians take a little bit longer to develop. But once you develop them, you've got a hell of a football player there. Sometimes it takes 3 years.
Now, let me ask you another thing, Burke, because you talk about developing young kids, and more parents are worried about concussions and the injuries that their kids will sustain playing football than they would playing soccer.
I could go
rugby.
I could go out and get hit by a bus tomorrow. Let's figure it out.
Again?
It's been 2 times now. Let's figure it out. You know what? Football's football. The equipment they're using now is a hell of a lot better than it was 20 years ago. The helmets are better made and better engineered. The pads are thicker. Football's football, and it's not going away. So if the kid wants to play football, if I don't know any. I don't know if I have kids out there or not, but I tell you, if I did, I would allow my kid to play any sport he wanted. And if football was the sport he wanted to play, then shit, he's going in there.
All right. The man that won't throw rocks into schoolyards, Burke Dales. Good points. Thanks, buddy.
Hey, Mike, I'm not done yet. Okay, so
I wrapped up already.
I'm not done on this Canadian thing yet at all. And there's another massive component, in my opinion, with Canadian players in community. Okay, so I had the honor of doing a lot of community appearances in Calgary when I played 8 years here with the Stamps.
Right.
And we were doing appearances every week. And it was a lot more practical to send a Canadian kid into reading books to kindergarten kids at a school or whatever the appearance may be, because they know the culture up here, they know the society, they're good with people, they're a household name up here, maybe from college. There's that component that we didn't really discuss, right? And sometimes when you're sending a guy from Compton in to read kindergarten books to the kindergarten kids, it might not be the move.
Okay. I get that. But the bottom line on this is we're talking straight football. Would the product not be better on the field if it was just open up? Best player wins.
Yes, slightly better.
I win.
Slightly better. But we've been having this conversation now for a number of years.
Yep.
Why try to fix what's not broken?
But it is broken.
It's not, in my opinion, it's not broken. The teams now, they've got to go out and find those good Canadian players, and they just don't want to put the time into doing it. They'd rather go down and pluck a few more Americans off and bring them up and plop them into positions. Yep. Would it improve the quality of the game? Slightly. But this is still the CFL, and this is still, at the end of the day, a Canadian game.
There's another thing here, too. So part 3 of this conversation. Is it not up to the teams to start marketing better? And I don't want to sound like an old timer, but back in our day when we were on Sports at 11, we had those guys on every friggin' night in the summer. Almost. We'd have a Stampeder on. The point I'm making is you need the local media. And I know things have changed and it's internet and this and that, but you still cannot you can't treat the media like shit and have them expect to help you get your product's name out there.
Absolutely.
Right? And that's what the Stampeders and that's what the CFL in the last decade has done. That
point we can agree on, Mike. The marketing behind these teams right now is piss poor. It really is. There's no other words to describe it. Back in the day, there was media following. You were inside the locker room. It was more of an intimate media following. Now, it'd be hard to find an article on the last football game. Where do you find it? The paper's old news. You're looking through the internet, and there's a bunch of garbage on the internet. Yes, so absolutely, to back up your point on that, the marketing has dropped huge. It's disintegrated, and they need to revamp the marketing of the CFL.